Welcome back, Paul Catalina and Garrett Ross. And I teased a game before the schedule that's getting overlooked because of Colorado and Nebraska, and probably Texas and Michigan as well. But number 14, Tennessee, is it says at NC State. The game is at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. So NC State is the home team, but They're playing on a neutral field, which, again, we don't like the neutral site things, but I do think, given the fact that there are going to be tons of Tennessee alums that are buying tickets, so this is probably not a stupid idea to have it at a bigger stadium than NC State. But this one could be. I mean, I'm. It could be upset alert for Nico Amaliava and Josh Heupel in the Vols. NC State's good. I know that they gave up some points a little bit last week to Western Carolina, but ultimately completely took over and dominated that game. So I'd be watching that. I will be watching this one on Saturday night. This is one of the best games of the week, and nobody's talking about it.
Right. Well, this could be this week's Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech. Honestly, it really could. But I feel like this one's obviously it's getting overshadowed because the Dion hype train play in Nebraska. You got Shadur going up against Dylan Raiola, and that's a rivalry beyond and the fact that they're finally starting to play this again more often. That's going to garner the attention. And then you also mentioned Texas and Michigan. I mean, that's two of the bluest blue bloods there are. I think just the vibe of Tennessee and the expectations for them, because they're one of those programs that were lost in the shuffle. Now they're quote unquote back to where people expect them to be. And they've garnered this firestorm of attention that people have just been waiting for. And when you have a high caliber quarterback like Nico Amaliava, everybody, that's must see TV. But at the same time, you're playing a program who, outside of people like us who follow college football more closely than others, or people in ACC territory, you're not familiar with North Carolina State or Dave Doran or what he's been able to do there. They're just kind of like another program. And, coming into the season, all the talk when you talk to ACC, when North Carolina State was probably the fifth team anybody would ever bring up. So I think people don't necessarily understand their value yet and how dangerous of a team they are. But if they come out and keep this thing close or actually get Tennessee, that's going to change the whole narrative, especially the way the ACC is wide open, because you'd be looking at them and Miami being the front runners at that point.
And Georgia Tech and Syracuse play this week. Syracuse put up some yards. And
Kyle McCord at Syracuse.
And Kyle McCord, he kind of fits there, and he put up big numbers in Fran Brown's offense. So that
Did you see
one.
Fran Brown's comment? He was like, I think I need to send Ryan Day a thank you letter for letting us get this guy.
Yeah. FSU didn't kick the tires on him.
No, they did not.
Only had one loss. I feel like I was very complimentary of Kyle McCord last year when all this went down.
I thought he would be – I like him more than Will Howard. I like him more than Will Howard. You know that.
Yeah. He had one loss. What are we talking about here?
I don't know.
What are we talking about?
He's not great, but
and then,
a damn winner.
Here's the other thing. Yes. And you're going to let this guy go with one loss in the Big Ten to Michigan, to the eventual national champion. You're just going to all these other schools that need quarterbacks, you're going to let him go to Syracuse?
Yeah.
No offense to Fran. I love Fran. I love great, good for Syracuse, but
it's a steal. And he knows it.
You're going to let this guy go to Syracuse? No. I mean, yes, he's certainly a bridge quarterback, but
dude, for them, that's what you need.
Lost one game. So, there's a lot of teams that could use a guy who's played at that level. Big time games.
There's not an environment he'll roll into in the ACC that will match that he's not going to be scared to go on the road and play because he's going to the damn big house and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he was scared to play there, but everybody is. No. But yeah, no, I don't know. That's why when I kept talking about it last year, when it's why are you pushing this guy out to the portal? Why not just, I guess they'd run their course with him, but it didn't make and that did make sense to me then. It doesn't make sense to me now. And then for everybody else to just be well, Ryan Day doesn't want him and I don't. Okay. I mean, again,
yeah.
Ryan Day's lost that game with CJ Stroud. So it's not like it was like Kyle McCord came in and he was the difference. Ryan Day's never won that game, and Kyle McCord's only been the starter for a year. So the common denominator isn't Kyle McCord, it's Ryan Day. So if Ryan's like, well, I'm moving along from Kyle McCord, and it's like, this is going to solve everything. I mean, you had CJ Stroud for 2 of those and you lost them both. And then you had Kyle McCord for, I don't know. I'm in no way a college football recruiter or a general manager, but I am good at very simple math.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that with CJ Stroud, the second pick in the draft, you had 2 losses. With Kyle McCord, who will not be the second pick in the draft, you had 1 loss. The common denominator is not the quarterback.
Nope.
It's you. So, you know, sometimes if you're in the elevator and you're wondering who stinks and then everybody else gets out and it still stinks, then you're the one in the elevator who needs a shower. Like, that's it. Like, you're like, oh, it can't be me.
Right.
You know, I'm very with shopping this week with my wife. Like, we were like in an area, like going through the store, and there was a guy in front of us who had like terrible BO.
It's the worst.
And it's the worst. But I was like, I didn't quite realize that he had been on every aisle with us in the first part of the store. So I was like, hey,
you're starting to do some.
I was like, is that? She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, is that me? She's like, no, it's him. I'm like, oh, thank God. So you think I would have ridden in the car with you this long and not said anything? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what if it just happened? Like, what if it just now happened? Yeah. You know, it was fine. It was fine. It's fine. Then done. But yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. Sometimes you have to look a little more inward as to what that is. So that's one to keep an eye on. Tennessee and NC State, I think, should be a pretty good game. I think that, you know, I know there's a lot of people in Tennessee might roll. I don't know. They might, but I kind of feel like they're not gonna.
I would lean more towards they would. I like what they have. I like their playmakers. I like their really just the trajectory they're on right now. North Carolina State can push them. I just think at the end of the day, Tennessee's got more dudes and more going for them in this matchup.
Yeah.
That makes any sense.
For sure. But
you're holding out hope for an upset. I get you.
Like Dave Doran, like
he's a hell of a coach.
These are the kind of games where, yeah, he wants you to doubt him. He wants people to be like, oh, Tennessee, look at this quarterback. I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've got the $7 million quarterback. You know,
yeah.
That's what he wants. He I promise you, he's sitting there in meetings this week going, this guy's worth $7 million. $7 million. Mm-hmm. Over and over again. Now, the backfire on that is like if he goes off and then like one of the defensive players is like, yeah, you see why, right?
Yep.
You get it, don't you? Dude's a freak. Let's talk about Colorado, Nebraska, though.
Okay.
Certainly contrast of styles.
Very much.
I've picked Nebraska in this game. I don't know how good I feel about that pick given last year and how that game got out of hand for Nebraska. Mm-hmm. But it's at home. It's going to be raucous, and they're better up front than Colorado is. Dylan Raiola, while it's still a true freshman, is not a walking turnover. Like I have no problem saying he's not a walking turnover like Jeff Sims is.
No, that was bad.
Like, just like I'm saying that, like, there's only one Hamburglar. Like, there's not another, you know, like that. He was really, really turnover prone. And so I don't know what's going to happen with true fresh. Like, quarterback wise, obviously the advantage is going to be Colorado in most of the games they play. Mm-hmm. Skill player wise, it's going to be Colorado in most of the games that they play. The thing is that you can't do that alone, and we know that. And given that North Dakota State was able to run pretty much right at them, I expect to see this game taken pretty much out of Dylan Raiola's hands and, you know, putting Colorado in a situation where, you know, they're not going to have the ball very much. I think that's going to be the goal of Nebraska to limit those possessions, because that's where an offense that's all finesse and, you know, like you called it, you and RJ Young both said the same thing.
It's high school football.
It's a high school offense.
I've seen, dude, I'm telling you, like, We're going to play it. I've seen it. It's literally the same thing they were doing at the high school. They've just transitioned it to Colorado, Jackson State, then Colorado. But no, I think at the end of the day, I trust the coaching staff that Matt Rule has. And just to be able to have these guys in a better position to be ready than what Dion and Colorado have. I also think that they're bigger, they're stronger than what Colorado is, and I think they'll have a game plan to where they eliminate Travis Hunter. They try to force Shadur to beat you with this arm, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if you see him get in a situation where he's rattled and throws a few picks. I think Nebraska, they know how important this game is for their fan base. They know that if they want to get to where they want to be as a program, you got to win these type of marquee matchups, and everybody's going to be watching, and I think they're going to be ready for it. I think they're going to use last year as fuel, and I think they're going to come out and beat Colorado pretty soundly.
They're gonna show Colorado about what they're going to do. The Big 12 is a very physical league.
It is.
It's a very physical league. And again, the misinformed of the world are like, oh, well, they're going to fit. Like I remember her saying, well, they're going to fit in well with that wide open offense. I'm like, well,
dude, go watch the SEC. Go watch that. That's
some of the teams run that, and some of them don't. Iowa State doesn't run it. Baylor runs it again. Tech runs it. TCU runs it. Houston doesn't really. They're kind of different. So everybody's like the thing of the Big 12 is that I do think it is more like the SEC in terms of there are more differences team to team than there used to be. Like for a long time, yes, the Big 12 kind of decided we're going to be this style of football. Correct. And everybody's going to try to win this way. Whereas the SEC was also a lot one way. Like it was the opposite. But now I think there's a lot of diversity in there in that, some teams are still going to be power like first teams. And then, Georgia doesn't really spread it out as much as you would think. They're still maybe like power first, but which with a ton of athleticism. And
to me, the biggest difference in the Big 12 and the SEC and the Big 10 is just the depth and size in the trenches. That's really the only difference. They have the skill players that can match anybody in any conference. I think they have the caliber of quarterback that's on par or better than any other conference. It's just when you find yourself in a game like West Virginia did the other day where you're trying to play bully ball against one of those programs, you can't do it and have success consistently because you just can't match the size and rotate the guys in and out. That's the only difference to me in the Big 12 in those two conferences.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is like that. Yes. The SEC.
Utah is about the only team that has the bulk size, and they still don't have that depth. They have more depth than others, but like them and K-State, Oklahoma State, that's about it right now.
Yeah. The SEC is the one who cornered the market on the big guys a long time ago.
And then they added the skill positions and that spread and just took it to another level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, that's why they're able to do what they're doing, because they, I think people don't realize this. Skill guys are almost a dime a dozen.
Yes.
Like you can, like wide receivers, running backs,
you can
those guys, you can find them. Like powerful, dominant linemen on either side of the ball are as rare as good quarterbacking. And you can, like, there's years of college football where there weren't a lot of great quarterbacks. There were a lot of good college quarterbacks, but nobody was, holy cow, Look, Gino Toretta won the Heisman Trophy. Gino Toretta was not a great quarterback. No. He was very good in college, and he was surrounded by juggernauts. But he also had an unbelievable offensive line, and his defensive line would have been like the Warren Sapp crew and all that. So he might have had the best defensive line ever. Like, so he knew that if they didn't score, this defensive line was going to go get the ball back. And then he knew if like, hey, it's raining tonight, we're not going to be able to throw as much. Well, the offensive line is going to knock it around, and I'm just going to hand it off to stud running back all night long, whoever that is, So you can win with a guy who's effective. You cannot win national titles if you don't have the, some of the best lines in the country. And the SEC has the biggest dudes. And when Nebraska was winning national titles, Nebraska was doing it. Nebraska had the biggest, baddest, strongest dudes.
Yep.
those teams, and because they ran the power I and the option, you had to have like big, athletic, strong offensive linemen, and you had to have they had defensive linemen that would just eat your lunch.
Yeah.
And so that's where it is. Like the strength of like, it's kind of like oil resources, right?
Yeah.
The countries that have the most oil resources, the ones that are the richest. Well, that's the oil of college football.
Well, I mean, just like I think a good example of it is Washington the past couple of years. Like Washington has always been good. Oregon's always been good. But like what got them when they would get in the big games was they didn't have the dudes in the trenches to compete. Yeah. Last year, they actually did. And the year before that, they did. And you paired that with the playmaking abilities of guys like Odunze and Jalen Polk in them with a guy, you had back there in Penix. That was the difference maker. You had the skill players, but if you wouldn't have had the trenches, you wouldn't have had the success they had there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think you're totally right. App State and Clemson, an interesting one to keep your eye on.
Could be tricky.
App State, like Clemson's probably going to win the game, but App State's the team that, like, I promise you, after getting thumped by Georgia, this is the last team that you want to see knocking at your door, who's very historically opportunistic and likes to kick you when you're down.
That's the thing. I think you're always, anytime anybody plays App State, the Michigan game will always get brought up. But
remember, they just went to Kyle Field. Yeah.
But then you recently done that at Kyle Field. So that's shown like that
they
wasn't
did to North Carolina. They beat North Carolina, or they pushed North Carolina to the brink. This is the team that, like,
I don't think so, though.
When my confidence is low, I don't want them to come in because that's where they feast. They're the ones who are like, oh, you're a little sad. Clemson's going to win the game. But I'm going to tell you right now, App State is going to come in and give them a scare.
They are. I just think this is one where Clemson's defense, because that was their only – they looked good for about the first half. They're going to smother App State, and you're going to need – if Kate Klubnik – can't make some like big time plays and smart decisions with the football in this game, then you really need to start questioning, like, is this our dude going forward? Like, legitimately, you have to.
I think I mentioned this during the top 5 yesterday. They've got to change the offense because clearly it's been figured out. And nobody is surprised by it anymore. And you don't have the kind of players.
Have the weapons.
They haven't had. David Hale wrote this morning. They haven't had a first round or second round offensive player drafted since 2021. So that's not all that long, but that's 3 drafts now that have happened, 22, 23, and 24, where they have not had a first round offensive player. Well, okay, like that's no lineman, no,
that timeline lines up with portal.
Right there, right? Exactly. So it's right there. They haven't had a first round pick on offense, and they're not going to have one this year.
No,
I mean, they're not. So the streak is going to go on for 4 years. So they've got to change what they're doing. Part of that is, they're not getting the same kind of skill players in. And the other part of it is that maybe their scheme has been figured out because they hired Garrett Riley to run the offense they're already running. I thought the point of bringing in a guy who was outside your tree was to shake things up, but that's clearly not the case, and because Dabo maybe wants to run what he wants to run, that's fine, but don't go the way of Jimbo where you get so into this that this is what you want to do and you don't innovate.
I'm really going to be interested to see if Garrett Riley stays there after this year, or if he kind of realizes this is kind of hindering me, in my growth as a coach, and I need to go out and kind of prove that it wasn't my fault that Klubnik wasn't developed, and it wasn't my fault that Clemson wasn't able to score. That's just kind of where I'm at. I think he might be on like a rehab tour next year somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. All right. I think that's about it for today. Paxton, Klubnik sucks like DJU. I don't trust him.
No, Paxton, I would like to get your opinion. I think Klubnik's situation is very similar to Garrett Gilbert.
Yes.
It's very similar.
Honestly, if he transferred out and went to found his SMU, he might be better.
Texas State or something, or UTSA.
Give him
Kidding me?
Yeah. Put him back down in San Marcos or San Antonio, and he'll probably
I don't know, Houston.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him find a school in Texas next year to play at. to try to rehab his profile. And then Clemson's going to be stuck with a very inexperienced quarterback again. But they're not hitting it out of the park with these things.
No.
And, DJU, I mean, his is obviously, to me, it's 50% on him and 50% on his coaches.
Right.
Like the coaches who haven't realized, like, this is what he can do. That the best season he had was last year. And what did they do? They took the ball in his hands as much as they could.
Well, Damian Martinez helped him
so exactly
much.
Well, if you've got 4 running backs that you like, maybe do that. Now the problem is that nobody's afraid of him passing, so they're crowding the box and they're going man on the outside, knowing that, like, all right, I mean, Malik Benson might run past me, but the ball's going to get overthrown or underthrown or thrown to the same yard line, but at a different part of it. Like, oh, well, I mean, he ran to the 30. I threw it to the 30. Yeah, but he was over here, right, and you threw it over here. Like, what's going on there? So, yeah, he's got the yips. But Fight on Natty's, they were talking about USC and says, we may have something cooking with Miller Mosto. I think you do.
Congrats to you from this LSU fan. Y'all's defense was so improved. Your quarterback stepped up. LSU, you took advantage of LSU's ignorant mistakes. Hats off. Y'all have a fun squad.
Yeah. How hilarious is it that the first thing, I mean, it's not hilarious to me. I mean, the biggest thing that he did, that Danton Lynn did, was come in and go, all right, you guys are like doughy soft.
Dude,
so we're gonna make you physically better. And then the scheme was secondary to that. But I'm just kind of surprised that Lincoln Riley let that happen.
That's what confuses me.
Part of me thinks that,
long,
like,
man.
he with how he works, he's the offense, the defensive coordinator's the defense, and then that he just leaves it alone and maybe leaves it alone too much.
Yeah, but at some point, I kind of feel like that's one of those situations, and I could be totally wrong on this. This is all speculation, but where it was kind of like you're loyal to a fault to somebody. Mm. And maybe he was just loyal to a fault to Alex Grinch, and ultimately, and he wouldn't be the first coach that's done that. We see it happen all the time. But yeah, I think I said the other day, if they can continue to build off of the success and that defense gets better, Lincoln Riley owes a lot of people apologies for not having this in place to fix beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely.